Okay, here's my audience. Okay, let's talk about death. Specifically, life after death. But probably not the life after death that you all are thinking about. Let's talk about life after death, after the loss of a loved one, and how it affects us that are still here. So we all know that we lost our mom a few weeks ago, and it's still pretty new, it's pretty fresh. We're all still grieving her, so it can be a difficult topic for us. So I wanted to show this picture of my mom. It was taken a few months before she passed away, and she was probably the happiest she'd been in her life here. And so I feel like it's a good memory for me to hold on and keep on to while I go through my grieving process. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about what the definition of grief is, what the psychological effects of grief can be, and the physical symptoms that grief can induce. So according to the PDQ Supportive and Palliative Care Editorial Board, grief can be defined as the emotional process of reacting to the loss of a loved one. Grief is something that everybody's eventually going to have to go through. We all have loved ones, and nobody lives forever, so grief is essentially inescapable to us all. So how long does grief last? According to Zysuk and Shear 2009, the intensity and duration of grief is determined by multiple forces. Those forces can consist of your personality type, your attachment style, how many losses you've endured during your lifetime, and the relationship that you've had with the people that you've lost. So next we're going to go over the psychological process and the 5 stages of grief. So according to Grief No Date from Psychology Today, there are 5 stages of grief. They are denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. Axelrod 2019 says that there are definitions for each stage of grief. Denial can be defined as saying, well, this isn't happening. This can't be real. And denial is basically your body's way of shielding you from the initial shock of losing somebody. Anger is next, and anger is a difficult one. It's basically placing blame. So you can place blame on maybe the doctors, maybe they didn't work hard enough. Maybe you want to place blame on my mom for, not stopping smoking years ago. Maybe you want to blame yourself because you didn't take advantage of the time you had while your loved one was still here. Depression is next, and that's been my most difficult one so far. Depression is defined as a deep sadness, and depression can interfere with your daily activities. Some days maybe you don't want to get out of bed. Some days maybe you don't even want to take a shower. Depression has been difficult for me because I have so much on my plate and so much to take care of, and it's hard to do everything that's required of me and still deal with my emotions. So bargaining is next, and bargaining triggers if only statements. So if only the doctor would have worked harder, maybe the outcome would have changed. If only my mom would have taken better care of herself, maybe she'd still be here. The last one is acceptance. And acceptance is basically just making peace with the situation and dealing with the loss, maybe overcoming the loss. I saw a TED Talk recently that went viral on the internet, and the most important part of it that resonated with me was not moving on, but moving forward. And you don't want to move on because you don't want to leave behind what you had with the person that you lost. You want to take what you have and you want to move forward and keep it because, essentially they helped build who you are, and you want to keep going. You don't want to leave it there. So it's also important to know that these stages can occur in a different order. Somebody might go through depression first, and then they might get angry, and they might go through their anger phase. Well, then they might get over their anger phase, and they might regress, and they might go back to depression. It's really important to understand that every grieving process is normal, and everybody's grieving process is different. So however you guys deal with it is important to you, and however I deal with it is important to me. So finally, I'm going to deal with the physical symptoms of grief and what they can induce. Grief can induce immune system issues, cardiovascular system issues, digestive system, and nervous system responses. So cardiovascular issues can range from high blood pressure, chest pains, and even some irregular heartbeats. The gastrointestinal response is the most responsive to grief. It can cause butterflies in your stomach. It can cause irregularity. When grief gets physical, it says that it can even cause the inability to eat and keep food down. So in conclusion, we've defined grief. We've gone over the grieving process and the psychological effects, and we've covered the physical symptoms that it can induce. I hope you all now have a better understanding of what grief is doing to our bodies while we go through our own processes. And I want you to know that the grieving process is not a bad thing. The grieving process is basically just a reminder that there is life after death, and it's important to keep moving forward.